Aaron Wright. He is a recent winner on the PGA Tour. He does things his own way and he's coached by Me and My Golf, so it's going to make an interesting analysis as well. I've actually played with Aaron on the mini tours when he was first coming out, so I know his game firsthand, so it'd be interesting just to break it down. So on the left hand side we have down the line and then face on the right. So let's have a look at his little trigger move. I love looking at these. So Aaron's trigger move looks like he is left eye dominant. You see this move with guys that are left eye dominant where that head, watch this tilt of the head there. Can you see that subtle move? That's just really to position that eye in that left eye, because he's left eye dominant more than likely, in a position where he can see the ball at the top of his backswing. So we like looking at those trigger moves just to see where guys move from. So if we look from down the line, setup wise, love that posture. He's got a nice neutral spine in that he's matching the natural curve of his spine. Nice bit of knee flex. His arms just hang just outside, which we normally see with driver, just outside those shoulders. From face on, you'll see this with all the good players. They've got a little bit of foot flare. His grip is pretty neutral there. It's actually quite hard to see with those two gloves on, so much unique to Aaron. So let's bring him into takeaway. This is where sort of probably idiosyncrasies or not your typical takeaway occurs here for a PGA Tour player. So his hands, I talk a lot about these hands working back in a little alleyway here. You'll see Aaron does pretty nice job of that, maybe a little bit more inside, but the camera angle as well, but it's quite, hands work a little bit deep there, and you'll notice, look how that face is probably a little bit shut compared to his backline, and that shaft is really far outside his hands. If we look from face on, you'll see this move where he really works that club shaft up, and you'll see this in the next few frames, but you can see nice bit of body movement through the head there, a little bit of torso rotation, a little bit of hip turn, very sort of textbook, apart from that takeaway of it being quite up and out, which you'll see a little bit more as we move him into mid backswing. So you'll see here, look how much that shaft is outside his hands there. Normally we'd see the shaft a little bit more parallel to the target line, and this is where you'll start to see big differences. His right elbow is going to start really working behind his body, and then that shaft really going to sit upright. So if we watch it now, you can see here how he's got this funky move where that club works out and then up, very much almost like the A-swing principle that David Ledbetter teaches. So you can see how upright that shaft gets really early, and look how deep his hands are. They're really behind him, rather than you'll see a lot of guys where those hands are more in that position where that circle would be. So what's happening here is that right elbow is going to get really behind him. If we look from face on, you can start to see, look how that shaft's really upright there, and that right elbow starts to disappear here, and you can see how it looks a little bit funky because his hands are so far behind his body in that position there. Pretty unusual. And then we get up to the top, you'll see how that right elbow starts to work out behind him here. Really deep hand position, and we'll just leave it there. So let me bring him up to face on. You'll see those hands are working back behind him. Really lovely load into that trail hip here. Look at that torso rotation. Lovely torso rotation. Staying pretty centered with that head. You can see there's not a huge amount of drift back off the ball that you might see with some guys. Club shaft a little bit short of parallel, but let's just look at the static position here. Face is ever so slightly short compared to his lead arm position. He had weakened his grip this week, leading to his first PGA Tour victory, so I'm assuming he does get a little bit short in the pass, which I know from playing with him, he hits quite a low ball. I mean, he might have, this is years ago, so he might have changed that a little bit, but looking at his swing and hearing feedback from guys, Aaron does hit it very straight, quite low, and his game is very much suited around like fiddly courses, like he won in Hong Kong, won the Scottish Open I think a few years back. So I think Aaron's going to do really well on PGA Tour courses that are quite tight, like a Harbour Town. I don't think, which we'll see in the downswing, I don't think he'll do well on the big like a lot of water, a lot of force carries courses just because of the flight that he's had with his swing. Might be wrong, I hope I am. So you see there, this is where for me he sort of makes up for some of the funky positions in the backswing, shall we say. So you'll see here, look at this load, this transition move, this right knee starts to flex a little bit there. Can you see that flex in? He really just driving the weight into that lead toe. You can see how that left knee is also starting to flex a little bit more. And then what you'll see is if we look at the left hand, you'll start to see that moving into more of that flex position, and consequently because of that, look what happens to the shaft now. It shallows out beautifully. Can you see that subtle move? Flexes, get that move in, the knees loading the ground, and you can really see how that shaft starts to pitch much shallower. If we look from face on, you'll see there, can you see how that left hip, that left knee, very, very athletic move. I think he's increased his distance quite a lot in the last few years. See that boom down, and then love that position with the body there. His hips are nice and level once the belt buckle's pointing at the ball. I think that's a very biomechanically sound swing. You can see how much lag he's got there, so he's creating that power. If we look from down the line though, this is where I think he might encounter some problems a little bit, is that trail elbow gets really behind him there. You can see just quite behind his body. You'll see a lot of guys where that right elbow is a little bit more in front, but still he gets it into a pretty decent position there. Sorry, the camera's a little bit grainy here, but the elbow now sort of gets more in front of his body. You can see if I draw a line on here, you'll see how he slightly loses his posture there in downswing just because that right elbow's got behind him. He then has to sort of stand up to get it back to the ball and get it a little bit closer on plane here. Be interested to see what shot he's hitting here. I'm assuming a little low punchy draw, because you can see how the club shaft's a little bit outside there. Maybe a little, I'd say a pull draw or a pull fade from the screen on the left. Let's bring him down. So nice bit of load. Very, this is this unusual position. You see it more from face on here, how that right elbow gets out and away from his body. You'll see a lot more guys on tour have more of this motion in the right elbow. That's why Aaron hits like quite a low driving ball as opposed to that high launch that you see guys like Rory. You can really see there, look at that gap appearing, and then gets it in a really solid position there. In terms of that shaft lean, you can see how he has got a little bit of bend there in the left arm, and then that there is quite a big gap. So all this about keeping your arms close together. He's won on PGA Tour. You don't need to do it. Obviously, I think he's going to limit him in terms of some of the courses he can win at, but he's a great player. I love the motion and how he plays his own game here. Like, he's just very consistent. You'll see here, it just covers it really nicely, and he knows that, so he just plays to his game and plays to his strength, which is something a lot of guys can learn from. You'll see how it comes out exit because of that right arm position being so behind him in the backswing and down the downswing. You'll often see when guys get that right arm into this position where it is very much behind the body, you'll see this position in the follow through where the hands are quite low and left, and you get this sort of head down position. Again, very common with guys that are right-handed and left eye dominant, that head stays down for quite some time. Then let's bring him through to a nice finish there. I think he's just lost this one at face on outright, but this one on the left he absolutely pummeled. I think you can see how he starts to exit left through his shoulders. Now the head starts to come up, loads of extension through, and just holds that finish. It's very much like a low flighted. This is why he'll do well in like I said, the more finicky golf courses and like Europe, because of his game suited with that. So can you see how he's just covering it with that right arm? And you can really see that on this one where that right arm starts to work out in front of his body and he really sort of covers it. Really good player. He's got a great mentality. Like I say, he's probably not one of the most impressive guys to watch in terms of he's not the longest hitter, doesn't hit like super duper high shots or anything like that, but he knows his game and he can play the game really well. I think he'll have a very decent career on the PGA Tour. Like I say, with that action he's got at the minute with the right arm position, now he sort of covers it in this downswing position. I can't see him really doing well on like big, long, force-carried golf courses, but I think he'll be a master at those little like chess-like golf courses where you have to pick them apart, especially with his flight. Love his action. Really nice guy. Well done, Aaron.